like to say welcome to everybody that is in attendance this
welcome.
evening to our Black Docs Talk Health for the Holidays. Today we're going to be going over a series of topics, especially those that are related to medicine and health in the holiday season. A lot of the hot topics that you know we encounter, whether it's for us in the clinic or whether it's for you at home and being about with your family. So first of all, to introduce ourselves, we are the moderators this evening. I am Dr. Jeremy Hockstrom.
And I'm Dr. Jermaine Hockstrom.
And we're both in the internal medicine specialty. Next, we have Dr. Janelle Lee Allen. She is a specialist in gastroenterology and hepatology, also known as the stomach, intestines, and liver specialty. We have Dr. Cindy Agu. She is specialty in neonatology. That's basically, of course, infants that are really tiny. Dr. Elizabeth Johnson, specializing in pediatrics. And then also we have Dr. Chinamelu Okoye. He specializes in internal medicine and pediatrics. Next, we have Guinea Ekwezuma. He specializes in obstetrics and gynecology. Next, we have Dr. Nicholas Fletcher. His specialty is psychiatry. And last but not least, Dr. Lauren Yorota. Her specialty is family medicine. Yep. So before we get started,
we got one more.
Grab up there, Randy. That's one of the top ones right here.
Randall McPherson, the one and only Dr. Randall McPherson. He also specializes in family medicine. Absolutely. Sorry about that, Randy. So before we get started, we're going to close. First of all, we're not receiving any gifts or payments from pharmaceutical companies, biotechnology companies, health institutions, or any of the private or public institutions for today's event. This event will be recorded for educational purposes. By participating in today's call, you will be consenting to this recording and potentially published educational evaluations. All of the information shared here will solely reflect the views of the panelists, and this will include the panelists' research of nationally available information, as well as panelists' own personal experiences. The views expressed here are not representative of our associated institutions and shall not be taken as strict medical advice. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained through our platform here is for general information purposes only. And as always, please talk to your doctor or qualified healthcare professional for more information. Before we get started, again, for the audience, as we progress through tonight's event, we ask that you submit your questions via the question tab at the bottom of the screen. If there are any difficulties, please use the chat box to share your, if there are any difficulties, please use the chat box instead of the Q&A to share your experience. If you find that your question has not been answered after an extended period of time, it is likely that the question had either been previously answered or that the specific question is further along the list of questions to answer. All right, so kind of our style tonight is we'll be introducing several different topics. We'll be introducing several different topics here. Topics are ranging from dietary management and fitness, top holiday health-related issues, as well as mental health in the holidays, influenza, and last but not least, COVID-19. We'll go through each topic individually and address key points. Within that discussion, you guys can feel free to ask questions along the way, or if you feel more comfortable asking for a question toward the end, that is fine too. So, welcome panelists, and thank you all for being here. And our first topic of the night will essentially be talking about diet management and fitness in the holidays. So as we know, the holiday season comes around, we have, whatever holiday, whether it's Kwanzaa, Thanksgiving, Christmas, there's a whole long range of holidays in the fall. And with that comes a lot of family gathering and a lot of food. So to start off, a lot of us are concerned about weight gain, salt intake, sugar, and of course, intermittent fasting for those that are really trying to watch your health and your weight. And then of course, we talk about, it's the end of the year, people are trying to get in their physicals and screening. So just to start off, in regards to, weight gain, that's a common question that I get in the clinic. We talk about calories, we talk about, how to mitigate that. Does anybody have advice for our audience about how do we mitigate this weight gain?
I have advice.
Go ahead, Cindy.
So we all love the holidays because we can eat whatever we want for the most part. Like Dr. Hashim was saying, we can have all the sugar in the world. I love sugar. And all of the super fatty foods, which is great. But we have to be careful with it over the holidays. I recommend kind of eating smaller portions, drinking a lot of water during your meals. I feel like if you drink that good amount of water, you kind of get full a little bit faster. Also, a good thing would be to eat slow. So I know people get excited, including myself, when they see all this good food, so they just want everything. I'm Nigerian, and the Nigerians say that my mom always says is my eyes are bigger than my stomach. So I'll get all this food on my plate, and then I think I can finish it all, but I really can't. So I recommend getting really just small portions at first. And I mean, it's good to kind of take a break from any diets or that anybody may be on during the holidays. So I think taking smaller portions is good. Also, I recommend, if possible, I think a good thing would be taking a walk with the family, after you had a large meal. It kind of gets your gut moving. Dr. Lee Allen can talk more about that, but you can get your, inside moving and get those calories burned, or at least half of or a quarter of what you ate burned by just walking around the neighborhood for 30 minutes or so, playing fun games with the family to get those calories burned, dancing to cool Christmas songs to get those calorie burns. So there's a lot of things that we can do over the holidays to stay fit and healthy.
I definitely second that. That's definitely something that my family has done. Essentially, after you have the big meal, see if you can put on some music, do a little bit of the new latest dance, let the kids have a little fun, and then show you how to do any of the new dances. But definitely incorporate moving. I think Cindy or Dr. Agu also mentioned about intermittent fasting. For some people that works, where essentially you're only containing your amount of calories in about 6 to 8 hours out of a 24-hour cycle. That's something that can work. If you are someone else who feels like, if I tell myself not to eat, I'm going to want to eat and eat everything, then you might want to do something that's a little bit modified, where it's not necessarily that you're completely fasting, but rather that you are really being cognizant of how many calories that you're taking in during the early portion of the day, so that you can allow for your main portion in your main meal, to your main calorie intake to happen during that dinner hour. So for instance, if you're waking up in the morning and you're helping with cooking, maybe just tiny bit of not having a full big breakfast. Maybe you won't want to only do a small portion of protein, whether that be, just some eggs or, something like some toast, have lots of, fluids like Dr. Agu had mentioned before, whether that be tea, things to that nature. Also try to remember that if you are wanting, kind of switching up, alternating. So if you're somebody who loves cake, like I do, then you might want to make sure that you are, whatever sugars you're having, the body is trained to be able to make more fat whenever you eat sugar. So even though sugar has, less fat in it, it indeed will trigger your body to produce the insulin hormone, which will then say, let's make fat in the body as well. So pair your fats and your sugar with protein, making sure that it's with around the meal time. Don't just have cake, hours after you've eaten or hours before you eat. And also try to remember how much you're drinking. Try to drink lots more water, which doesn't have, too much of anything in it. Or, flavored waters that have maybe the ice, that has 5 calories, or just teas, something that's much more reserved, so that you can allow your calorie intake to be for that evening dinner. And Dr. Okoye.
Yeah, a lot of great points have been made already. I will try to be very targeted so I don't, give too much and go on forever. But essentially these times of the years, we tend to overindulge. We tend to eat a lot of the similar, it's overindulge a lot of new stuff, and then eat a lot of the portions of the stuff that we normally eat. And this can be an issue, especially if you have underlying health conditions. So we want to make sure that we're advocating good habits for the regular healthier folks, people without any major issues, but especially for the people with underlying conditions. So we want to address it to, let's say, starting with the cooks, people who are going to be cooking the meals, kind of make an extra effort to create a healthier meal. I'm not going to go into the whole details of what types of meals we should be making, how to make them. There are a lot of resources online. Consider adding more vegetables to the current regular foods. Consider veganizing or vegetanizing. Vegetanizing, is that a thing? Somebody make that a thing. Foods
it's
that
yours
are,
now.
I'm claiming it, that are highly consistent of meats, things that are not as nutritious. So consider doing those type of things, considering kind of holding off on salt, extra sugars, really going out of your way to make sure the people you're serving are, not putting themselves at risk. For the consumers, which also includes the cooks, you want to make sure, one, we're not trying to restrict anybody from any particular foods. I mean, this is the time you want to enjoy yourself, but, be mindful about how much you actually take in. So, take 4 smaller portions, so if you see this really nice cake, that, you've been eyeing across the room, take your slice, but, maybe do like a piecemeal. I'm going to take a piece of this, and I'm going to take another piece of a cake and then do a little spoon. Do your sampler, and save the rest. All right. Dr. Agu mentioned how, she's Nigerian, and I'm Nigerian too. And Nigeria people, how to put away food. But, make sure, if you have to save food, bring your little Tupperware with you, find a foil pan around, and just pack away some of the food with you. If people look funny at you, you just tell them, I'm doing this for my health. All right. Save the food, put it aside. Don't eat all of it at one setting. It was mentioned to try to slow down your eating as well. Fast eaters, it can be essential. It's an issue. Even now around the holidays, fast eaters have a higher association with obesity than slower eaters. So essentially trying to limit how quickly you bite and chew. Let's say, giving it a number, 15 to 30 chews, all right, per bite, all right, to try to let you slow yourself down. Take a break in between bites, introduce some water. Okay, the gut, it takes about 20 minutes for your gut to tell your brain it's not hungry anymore, that it's finally full. So if you eat a whole bunch in between that 20 minutes, then you're gonna overload. So try to spread out your meal for 20 to 30 minutes. All right. People who like to save up, try not to eat anything the whole day wait till like the very last minute when the food is being prepared. Try to avoid that, especially for diabetics. You can alter your glucose sugar levels. That can be an issue early on, put yourself up for hypoglycemia. And then you end up overdoing it when you finally get to start eating. Try to have good snacks and nutritious foods in between or in preparation for that meal. So don't starve yourself. So I was gonna say, one of the big ones, alcohol. So people like to drink a good amount, but the issues with alcohol, okay, it limits your inhibition, so you are more prone to binge eating and kind of going crazy in general. But it also adds a lot of calories, empty calories, and this could work, mess up with your weight management. Blood pressure can be increased temporarily, immediate settings. So for people with hypertension, you really don't want to be overdoing it with the drink. Sugars can actually, what you would think it would go higher, but your sugars could actually drop. So for the diabetic, hypoglycemia is a problem. Okay, without getting into too much detail, the chemicals in the alcohol hold up your liver, basically make it too preoccupied so that it can't actually do what it's supposed to be doing, which is create sugars for your blood. So that sugar drops, all right? And for that reason, you actually want to eat while you're drinking, all right? Because one, you can get intoxicated faster. I think people tend to hear about that. But one of the biggest things is that you get hypoglycemic and you don't have sugar in your system. So eating actually puts a little bit of sugar into your blood, okay? And then it also, the hypoglycemia can mask what hypoglycemia looks like. So you could be having an issue if you're diabetic and you won't even know. People will think you're just drunk. So you really hold back on that. So no more than 1 to 2 drinks for the night, okay? So those are my tidbits, okay? I hope everyone has a notebook and is going to be getting all these gems throughout the day tonight.
Moderation is the key.
I wanted to also mention that in terms of like staying fit during the holiday, I know here in Detroit, we do have the turkey trot before or on Thanksgiving Day. So you can run a 3 mile if you want, 6 mile if you want, 1 mile if you like. And you can also walk these events too. So that'll be a great thing to do before you get down into the hefty meals. I think I might do it this year. So join me.
Or if you have a sports, if your family is big on sporting events like me, I'm big on football, having played in college, one of the things that we do is we have a little annual football game. So, that could be something, doing some kind of activity before, and, like everybody mentioned, everything in moderation.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So just to add on to what you guys are saying, I know one thing we talked a lot about sugar, but just one quick thing about salt is keep in mind that salt is hidden in a lot of foods, especially in the holidays. That's again your processed food, especially things that are canned and prepackaged. That's going to be things like a lot of your grain-based desserts like pies and pastries and cakes have high amounts of salt. And then keep in mind that your pre-mixed box of stuffing can have up to like 500 milligrams of sodium per serving. So just kind of keep that in mind. So when you're thinking about, again, low sodium items, think about low sodium broth, like for example, if you're making gravy for your turkey, things like that. One thing I just wanted to touch on. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, and you may be getting to it, but I was just going to add about annual cancer screenings, as we're talking about so many of the dietary things. You were going to hit on it. And if you were going to move from the sodium, the one thing I want to always tell my patients is about the fact that sodium, if you feel like you can buy something canned, remember that you can always buy the fresh or frozen. Fresh or frozen is something that we always support. And if you absolutely can only do canned, actually rinsing things off, just letting it kind of sit and run underneath water if you can, or if it's something kind of vegetables, you can even strain it and then kind of rinse it off and then put all of your own garlic, herbs, all of those other flavorful things, ginger, onions, to make it do what it do, is something that is very, very key and helpful. Sorry, go ahead, Twins.
All right, so thank you all for the nice input as in regards to diet and fitness. So our next overarching topic now is going to be our top holiday health related issues. So again, these are things that come around in the holiday. We have everything from pediatric issues, respiratory issues, breathing, viral issues, skincare issues, and even GI illnesses that we're going to be discussing here in this section. So to start off, there's something to kind of be aware of. It's often referred to as holiday heart syndrome, but Jermaine would like to elaborate just a little bit for us. So with holiday heart syndrome, it's kind of this syndrome that comes along that, people can develop what they call a dilated cardiomyopathy when it comes to over-consuming alcohol. So I'm not going to get quite into the details of, what causes it. There's a lot of research still kind of up in the air as to specifically what causes it, but we know that in general it has to do with overconsumption of alcohol. One key point I will touch on in regards to this is that your symptoms can include shortness of breath, lightheadedness, and one important thing that I do kind of want to mention here is what constitutes drinking in moderation. So CDC says that for women it's going to be 1 drink or less. For men, it's going to be 2 drinks or less a day. So what's a drink? Well, that depends on what you're drinking, right? So let's say it's a beer, and the appropriate consumption for beer a day would be 12 ounces. For the equivalent to malt liquor would be 8 ounces. The equivalent to wine would be 5 ounces. And distilled spirits, whether it's gin, rum, vodka, or whiskey, would be 1.5 ounces. So, I've had patients tell me, well, I drink a tall glass of vodka, and I tell them, well, that's more than 1.5 ounces. So people can overconsume without even realizing they're doing it because they're not realizing the content of the alcohol in what they're consuming. So one thing to kind of, really be careful about is keeping in mind how much you are consuming in this regard. Exactly. And so in regards to that, we oftentimes you might hear about during the winter weather that, heart attacks and things like that, people come in suddenly that might not have necessarily experienced it, but because they're doing things, overexerting themselves as well. From, let's say we're shoveling snow outside, and oftentimes, you'll hear if you're in a heavily snow area, when it comes to shoveling snow, I would just say this, go for more of the scooping option. Don't try to shovel the snow, pick it up and carry it over. That's oftentimes where you're putting extra strain on the heart. You're overexerting yourself. You're putting such increased demand that your heart oftentimes might not be conditioned to support. And then that leads to essentially a heart attack and things like that. So in the holiday season, you're talking about GI illnesses and foodborne illnesses, right? Would somebody like to touch on that? A lot of food and a lot of cooking is going on around these things. And oftentimes you might come home the next day, you might feel a little bit of, diarrhea or something, just not feeling right.
Not diarrhea. So, granted, everybody, we hope that nobody experiences that during their holiday season. At the same token, I know that in my past, years, I've had a circumstance or two where that's happened to me. And I get patients who sometimes will call me up if I'm on call during that weekend and say, "Hey, doc, I am, been vomiting. I've been having some loose stools. Should I go to the emergency room? What should I do?" Or either, sometimes it'll happen with the kids, and it could be not a holiday season where, folks are like, "Well, my, child is having, vomiting, or my child is having diarrhea." There's a couple things to these things. So one, understand that, if you're going out for a potluck, unfortunately, even in the best of intentions, maybe someone was sick, they didn't realize it, maybe it was during the early stages, and unfortunately, somehow the food was infected, maybe with a virus, maybe with some type of foodborne bacteria. Those are the two main causes for why you would have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Typically, it kind of starts between 12 to 24 hours after you've ingested the food. So call around to your friends and family who may have been at the gathering. If you can pinpoint a particular gathering, make sure everybody else is okay, including yourself. And the biggest thing for this is to stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. The funny thing is, whether you're a child or an adult, Pedialyte is the best oral rehydration solution. It has the right amount of electrolytes. Sometimes people try to reach for Gatorade, but sometimes Gatorade can have too many electrolytes and they don't have the right balance. And if you have underlying conditions like heart disease or kidney disease or liver disease, it can actually throw you off and cause you to have to go into the ED for other reasons. So the bottom line is stay hydrated. Oh yeah, see, Dr. Yorota has got that water. She's demonstrating exactly what you should be doing. Make sure that as long as you're drinking enough fluids to keep up with what you're losing, and that you start slow. Don't the minute you stop vomiting for 2 hours decide, oh goodness, I just want to go out to KFC or I just want to eat those leftovers now. No, start slow, hydrate yourself, do the brat diet and everything. Everybody knows the bananas, the rice, the applesauce, and the teas. So basically you just want to make sure that you're taking it easy, because essentially millions of people have foodborne illnesses, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea throughout the year. Typically, you do not have to go to the emergency room as long as you are staying hydrated. However, if you start having issues like you are having dizziness, you're having any blurry vision, you're having severe abdominal cramping that's not going away, or if you're seeing any blood in your vomit or blood in your stool, those are reasons why you would go to the emergency room, okay? Other than that, if you're just kind of feeling weak, get rest, stay hydrated, get the Pedialyte, get several liters of it, and monitor yourself, and you should be okay. That's about it for GI illnesses and when to go to the emergency room. And I was going to say, I don't see any questions in the chat, guys, so please ask.
I'll just say briefly to piggyback on what Dr. Allen was saying, just make sure the food is thoroughly cooked. I know it's holiday season. A lot of people gonna get excited. You know, you got a lot of things going on. You got kids running around, and just make sure the food is thoroughly cooked. And if you ain't normally in the kitchen, don't try to experiment and play around. If you in the kitchen with somebody experienced, yeah, but don't, you gotta be careful now. Especially if you're gonna be feeding a lot of people, you don't want to be the one that like, it was her mashed potatoes, it was her potato salad. So just be cautious of that. But everything what Dr. Allen was saying, as far as what to look out for, as far as to go to the ER, and yes, Pedialyte, hydrate, and rest. But just make sure the food is thoroughly prepped. Don't rush it. It's gonna get done. You're gonna be able to eat, enjoy it. But and yes, if you in the kitchen with Big Mama, take notes. But if you experiment and it's your first time, just be careful. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Something I didn't hear yet, but just to add in, because from the ped side, I always think about children are carrying all sorts of germs, but adults, we right up there. So wash your hands thoroughly, okay? Please wash your hands the full 20 minutes. Sing the ABCs twice, because very often somebody, when there's food poisoning, we're passing that along because someone didn't wash their hands well enough. You went to the potty, okay? Maybe you had some greens the day before, went to the bathroom, and then you didn't wash your hands well enough. Now everybody's sick. Or we're doing cross-contamination and you're not cleaning the areas where you're cooking well. So if you had raw meat, actually wash the areas and be aware of what you're touching when you're dealing with raw meat. So that's why it's actually best. I know I do. I know my father's on this chat here, so he's probably yelling, wear gloves. Okay, so he don't ever touch nothing without his gloves on. Okay, Daddy, I said it. So wear gloves, start them, and clean your area. Everybody wants to, we eat, and then for New Year's, we're like, oh my gosh, I want to lose weight. That's not the way you want to jumpstart your diet, is gastroenteritis. It's not it.
While we're talking about, diet, as question in the chat is actually a little bit different. They asked, how can I gain natural healthy weight? I love to add a little weight. So anybody have any advice about that?
I think that's a great question. A way to gain natural healthy weight, you really just have to eat a lot of proteins. So eat a lot of protein in your diet. You can do a lot of weight training, just working out, eating a lot of proteins. You can eat a lot of carbs, actually will help you gain weight. I know that by experience. Don't want the weight on there, but it's here. Eat a lot of carbs, your pastas, your pastas, your bread. You can have and proteins. You can have meat. You can have chicken. You can have steaks. You can have fish. Whatever type of meat you like to eat. You can also have beans as well. You can also have different types of nuts. Would also be good to consume for that. So there's a lot of different ways. You really have to also take a look at how many calories you are taking in a day. I know a lot of thinner people typically, no, because some thin people eat like they have, I don't know, like I get annoyed sometimes, but whatever, you can still eat a lot and try to eat more calories than you typically eat, and that'll help you also put on weight. The key thing about staying healthy with it is just trying to stay away from the sugars and the processed foods, really. And that'll kind of be the way you can kind of gain weight healthy.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, I think Dr. Agu kind of mentioned a little bit about it, but your lean meats, like your tuna, one of the things when I was doing a lot of weight training and trying to gain weight, tuna, chicken, kind of eating that with other complex carbs like sweet potatoes, not necessarily putting all the butter or kind of brown sugar on the sweet potato, but pairing maybe a piece of baked chicken or kind of a chicken breast with that and some green beans, that kind of thing, and maybe eating that more frequently throughout the day a lot of times what I used to do was just have like several pieces of chicken a week that I would like kind of saute in whatever your favorite kind of flavor is, and just have that ready to go. Peanut butter, almond butter, those are good ways to kind of gain some weight. Eating those things with often I used to put those in like maybe like one of those spinach wraps or one of those like wheat wraps, if you like bread, or if you want to shift to, if you want to eat like a 9-grain honey oat kind of thing, eating some peanut butter on that. Those are some ways to do that. And also pairing that with kind of working out, a little balance about like weight training, doing a lot more repetitions and alternating that repetitions of like weight training. Like for example, if you have really small legs and you're trying to build up your legs, maybe doing a weight day for your lower extremities, and then alternating that with an upper extremity day, and then doing a couple of like a heavy day once a week, to kind of build muscle mass.
And I would just add really quickly, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, my dad just wanted to point out, do not leave your food out longer than 2 hours, especially meats and potato salad.
Also eggnog. Eggnog is one of those, exactly. You don't want to leave out too long. If you have it sitting there, after like a few hours, you want to switch that drink. But I just wanted to add, off of what Dr. Ekwazima was mentioning, and with the weight gain, you want to make sure you like healthy weight, of course. Usually you want to gain around 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's how you can get a sense of how much you should be gaining. You can kind of estimate what your goal weight is, and then kind of find out, okay, I should be expecting to hit these numbers by this period of time. What is a good method I personally use to try for watching my own weight, calories, things like that? There's an app that's out there, a software called MyFitnessPal. And so it has a website, and you can also download the company app. But that I think was extremely helpful for me to keep track of my own metrics and my food parameters and all those things. And so that I think would be really helpful.
Okay, I just want to ask or add to all these great ideas is remember earlier when we were saying, when we want to do something healthy and kind of portion control, we'll take the opposite approach if you're trying to gain weight by doing fluids last. So eating your meal, I do this even, with kids. If you're trying to get them to gain weight, you want to have them eat their meal first and then do your fluids last. It's an issue we run into in our older population too, where your appetite just isn't quite there. So choosing high calorie foods that are calorie rich is really important. One thing I want to point out too is we hear a lot about the Ensure milkshakes, which are helpful for weight gain, but they're not to be used as a meal replacement, but a meal, supplement. So you're doing them in addition to breakfast, lunch, and dinner to get those extra calories. And we do want to try the natural approach first and try our best, but don't forget that, your physician is there to help you, and there is medication that helps stimulate your appetite if needed. There's things to really approach this to make sure you're at a healthy weight, because, being too, calorie deficient can be just as dangerous as being overly calorie.
You recommending drinking those after though, like the Ensure as well, like for like older patients? Okay, after the meal. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I would say too, in terms of calorie counting, Dr. Okoye said that you want to gain about maybe 1 pound or 2 a week. So that's about adding 500 calories per day to your normal calorie intake. So if you take about 2,000 calories in a day, you want to now start taking 2,500 calories in per day. And by the end of that week, you should put on 1 pound that way. So that's another way you can look at it. If you're using the MyFitnessPal app, where it can help you track your calories, that's a good way to kind of see if you're gaining weight.
And then I think there's a comment in regards to ensure having salt and sugar. That is a good comment, but I think it really depends on how your diet is, what you already are eating. So if you're already, typically we use Ensures for folks who are not eating enough in general. So and specifically, there's other types of supplements of protein that will have less of the salt and sugar. So those are things that you can take a look at. When you're looking for things, you always want to have like a sodium content of 10% or less. That is actually what's considered low salt, really almost less than 5%. It's really hard to find that, but that's the balance that you want to find. And then when you're talking about your carbs, you really want to be under about 25% for carbs when you are buying, processed things. And I think there was one other thing that mentioned, not Ensure. There was a question in regards to intermittent fasting, fasting. I think we kind of touched on that. And I think Dr. Fletcher or Jeremy or Drs. Hogstrom's, did you guys have who was comment on fasting and intermittent fasting?
Well, what was the question?
The question is, what are your thoughts on fasting as a way to quickly lose weight? Is it a healthy, safe way to go about it?
I personally do.
It's the quickly lose weight problem. It's the quickly lose weight that I.
Yes. You don't want to quickly.
I have to stop that.
What's getting me, because as quick as it goes.
I do intermittent fasting, and it works for me. Fasting in general, it's a way. It's discipline. It's basically going between periods of not eating. I do the 16-8. I stop eating at 8 or 9 p.m. I'll eat around noon or 1. And I also exercise as well. Our bodies, even going back to like prehistoric times, we were hunter and gatherers. We didn't have refrigerators or stores. So you ate what you killed. Our bodies can do it. We're just so used to just, oh my God, I got to stuff my face every 2 or 3 hours. Don't get me wrong. The first week or two was a little difficult, because I'm used to eating 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. But I got used to it, and and the key is slow and steady weight loss. It's not for rapid, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds, 12 pounds in 1 week. 1 to 2 pounds a week. I lost 30 like over a 6-month span, or 7-month span, but it's also work out a lot. So for me, it works. But like what Dr. Hirota said, with all these different diets and ways, you want to consult with your physician and see which one works best for you, because it might not work for you. But intermittent fasting, per se, has been proven or shown to help not only lose weight, but maintain a healthy weight and reverse some of those medical conditions that some people might have, whether it's diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol.
I would say that, like, for me, I tried the intermittent fasting. It did not work for me because I was like, okay, I can eat between 12 and 8. So I ate a lot between 12 and 8, a lot. I was like, oh gosh, I got to get as much food as I can in. So it doesn't work for me, but I think it is good, like Dr. McPherson was saying, for a lot of people, but you have to know that the goal of intermittent fasting is actually to decrease the amount of calories that you're taking in per day. Yes. So you can't be like me and eat 2,500 calories between 12 and 8, because nothing's gonna happen. So you do have to still like have your portion control. And like Dr. McPherson said, you still have to work out too, because that's the only way that you're gonna lose that weight. The main goal, or what I have learned, is that the best way to lose weight is having that calorie deficit. So you're gonna have to eat less calories, and you're gonna have to work out more too to get those calories down. And that's the way you're gonna lose weight, and you're gonna lose it healthy. You do not want to lose, like Dr. McPherson said, 10 pounds in a week, because as quick as you lost it, you're gonna get it right back. Like, trust me, I know.
And I was
Johnson with that, from like the PEDS perspective. Well, one, to add on, you need to think about your activity level. Like, are you sedentary? Are you moderately active or active? And don't say like, oh yeah, I'm real active. I do something every day, and you just walk to the mailbox. That's not the same type of activity level. So that's determining your your daily calorie intake to maintain a healthy weight. 2, everybody has consistently said this is something that you want to do naturally. So we talk about in the office doing lifestyle modifications. We don't do diets. So lifestyle modifications are key. And then also, parents, please be aware of your teenagers and being on social media. Why do I say this? I have had patients who, because they're on social media, they have access to buying different things. And they come in, they're sick, we're sitting here trying to figure this out. And I've consulted with the other pediatrician I work with, and I said, did you ask them if they're consuming detox teas? And she was like, what are those? And I was like, oh, they're all over Instagram. And the teenager was like consuming detox teas like repeatedly. Nobody reads the fine print. And of course, the people selling it aren't telling you this, but they're only supposed to be used for maybe like 4 to 7 days. There's something that's very short, not what these teens are doing, or even just young women or young men. And they're on it like, I've been on this for months. Okay, no, that's just not helpful. So please just be aware of that. Know that your teenagers do know how to buy things on their own and access things. There are a couple of questions in our chats too, guys. So
yeah. So we're going to move on to the next topic, but we will try to circle back around toward the end and get to a couple of those questions that are in our Q&A chat as well. So our next topic, especially during the holiday season, is about mental health. And I know, especially in the more recent years, there's been a lot more emphasis on mental health and trying to normalize, seeking mental health care, because as we all know, there's traditionally been sort of a stigma of wanting to get help from, your mental health, because whether it's depression or anxiety or anything else. And there's always been the stigma that, if I go and get help, if I talk to a psychiatrist or a therapist or a psychologist, that, might be labeled as, somebody that can't make sane decisions, right? But that is not quite the case. And so we're here today to talk about the importance of mental health. According to the American Psychological Association, 38% of people surveyed said that their stress increased during the holiday season, which can lead to physical illness, depression, anxiety, and substance misuse. And a lot of the highlighted given reasons were a lack of time, financial pressures, gift giving, and family gatherings. To make matters worse, the National Alliance on Mental Illness noted that 64% of individuals living with a mental illness felt that their conditions worsened around the holidays. And so, with that being said, even for us in the office, I get people, probably I would say at least if I have a panel of 20 patients a day, I can guarantee you at least 4 to 5 of those are people that are having anxiety and depression. And oftentimes I've even had the conversation with them, trying to encourage them to seek that those mental health services. So just, talking to the panelists here today, what is some takeaways and that you would, talk to, give to anybody in the audience today?
This time of year brings a lot of stress. It brings a lot of doubt, brings a lot of anxiety, mostly because this is a time of year where people have so many expectations about what they should and shouldn't be doing. And the first things you want to do around this time of year is acknowledge your feelings. See where you're at. If either you personally or if you're feeling a certain way about other family members, whether somebody has passed away or you're feeling some type of sadness or some type of grief. The first thing you want to do is acknowledge that, and acknowledging that, you will allow yourself to figure out what is the next steps for me. What are the things I need to do to make myself feel better in this holiday season? And one of the most important things to that is to reach out to people that love you, people that know you, the people that trust you, because they're going to be the ones who are going to speak honestly to you. They're going to be the ones who are going to be able to tell you, okay, I have noticed this about you, or I have noticed that something has been off about you. And they'll be able to speak to you honestly and give you feedback that, hopefully is constructive, and at the same time gives you an opportunity to do something different. And if you're feeling stressed, reach out, talk to family, talk to friends. Another thing to do this holiday season is volunteering. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is get out of your environment, get out of the things that may be reminding you of the stressors, and put yourself in something that is more purposeful, that is more productive, and gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of pleasure to go to the holiday season. Equally as important, I don't know about you guys, but I come from a fairly large family. And so with that, there sometimes comes with expectations. Sometimes you have to deal with, past discretions or indiscretions. Sometimes you have to, deal with different family members and so on and so forth. So an important thing to do is to set realistic boundaries. If you're, especially coming off of this COVID season, we're going to see more people are going to be getting together this holiday season. And as they're getting together, some of those expectations about, if the pandemic never happened, you're going to realize you're right back into some of those same scenarios and situations that weren't necessarily positive for you. And so now is the time you want to start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do in that situation? How am I going to protect myself, protect my mental health? Maybe it means you don't go to a certain family function, or maybe it means you decide that, hey, I'm going to just go for a certain amount of time and pull back, or, as I said earlier, let it be known that, hey, this is where I'm at, and this is what I need from you guys, and this is how I'd like to be supported. And then at the same time, you may also decide to just set aside those differences and say, hey, for this holiday season, the only thing that matters is that we're together for the first time in a year and a half or 2 years, and all I want us to do is focus on what we're doing right now. Another stressor during the holiday season is finances, budgets. If you're someone that feels like they have to go all out and they don't necessarily have the money or have the finances for it, you really gotta say to yourself, I don't have it. And if you don't have it, give yourself a budget. Say, this is what I'm able to do, and if and be okay with that, because I promise you, nobody is really expecting you to break the bank any more than you are. And so be realistic with yourself, be realistic about your finances, be realistic about your budget, because when that new year comes around, all those bills come due, and that's when once all the holiday buzz and all that's going away, you're left alone with all the decisions that you made prior to the holiday season. And so just keeping a clear understanding of your budget and what you need to do. And lastly, I'll just leave you with one of my favorite things is just say no. That's it. If people are asking you and pulling you in different ways and you don't feel like you're capable, or you don't have the mental capacity, or you don't have the resources, just say no. Whether it be family, whether it be friends, at the end of the day, you got to be comfortable with the decisions that you make, because when all's said and done, you're the one who's going to be left to deal with whatever circumstances come from those. And so I would just encourage you to, be bold, say no when you need to say no, and then lean in when you're comfortable and you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes, and thank you for Dr. Fletcher. Those are all good things, and some things that I always encourage my patients is make sure that you do have that good support system around you, that family and those friends that are there supporting, especially around these times where a lot of times this is going to be especially given the pandemic now. It's going to be a time of year where, you might start reminiscing on a loved one that you might have lost, whether it was especially the COVID. And this might happen to be your first year without that loved one, right? Grandmother, grandfather, or mother, father, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, right? So it might be the first Christmas or the first Thanksgiving you might be spending without them. And so, just make sure that, just as Dr. Fletcher said, acknowledge your feelings. And if you start to feel that you're losing a handle on things, or if you're starting to feel that for some reason you might want to harm yourself or take your own life, we would encourage you to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This 1-800-273-8255. We'll put that in the chat too. And as well as there's a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration helpline. That's 1-800-662-4357. And we'll go ahead and enter those in the chat right now for you as well. So yes, again, during this time of year, this is always very stressful, and we're going through a lot of things.
I just want to say one thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Don't let anyone, I like that Dr. Fletcher said to set boundaries, and someone in the chat said no is a complete sentence. So don't be afraid to say no. But then also don't allow people to tell you that anxiety or depression are not real. It is not something that's all in your mind. You're not making it up. It is real. Anxiety and depression have very real physical effects on your body and how we go through life and how we function. And then also grief is, very real. Grief sneaks up on people. I think people always try to tell somebody, hey, you'll get by it. You'll get over this one day. You don't get over major losses. You learn to work with and live with your grief. But during the holidays, they sneak up on you. And so it is okay to seek help. No matter what anybody says, it is okay and you should seek help. Even when you're doing well, everyone can benefit from counseling. And to answer one of the questions in the chat, what do we think about meditation and mindfulness practice to help with holiday stress? You can do it even outside the holidays. You take time, whether if you're a person of faith or not, or if you're just a spiritual person, you should take time to just center yourself and just be still. Be still, be quiet, because the world it's constantly going, and just taking that moment to kind of ground yourself, saying to yourself, you know what, I am alive, I am well, I'm making it through. It means a lot. So sometimes we hit walls in life. So it's almost like a reminder for you to stop and maybe take a rest and lean on that wall. Like, don't be afraid of I gotta always push through. No, you don't. Sometimes you should just sit still. And
you think about it like regular maintenance. Think about it like regular maintenance. I mean, you want to maintain your body, you maintain a lot of other things in your life. So, the more we're learning about mental health, it's the same way, whether your medium of doing that is, exercising, for somebody else, it may actually be seeing a therapist. So just kind of think about those things.
Yeah.
And I just want to follow up to what Dr. Johnson was saying, in that, when you are feeling those specifically, and seeking help, some of the things you want to be looking out for, if despite your best efforts, you still find yourself that you're persistently sad, or that you're anxious, or all of a sudden you're just plagued by physical ailments. Everything hurts all of a sudden, and you can't really seem to feel better, get better. You're not be able to sleep. You feel irritable. You're snapping with people. All these signs are signs of depression, anxiety, just stress, and it's when you don't feel like doing the normal things that you normally do. When you don't feel like talking to family, talking to friends, reaching out to loved ones, when you're avoiding people and it's going on for days, weeks plus, that's when you should really be reaching out to mental health and services and seeking help, because that's your own internal way of saying, I need help.
Yeah,
I would even advocate.
Sorry about that.
No, you're perfectly fine, Dr. Rose.
It's so important to recognize, what you're going through. I know there's some recent studies, some articles that are coming out. A lot of main news sources are reporting how broken heart syndrome is on the rise among women who are in their 50s and above. And that's where the heart muscle is actually showing weakening because of all the stress and strain. This is some serious stuff that is only getting worse now that the holidays are among us, right? Seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. We have less sunlight. We're not, getting as much of that happy serotonin neurotransmitter. So we have to, recognize those things early and do something about them.
Yeah, I would even, just jumping off of what everyone said, there's been a lot of great stuff, and just advocating for a mental health counselor. It could be a psychiatrist, psychologist, and any form of specialist, even before you feel significant functional difficulties. Before you get to that point, I think everyone, Dr. Kwesi mentioned maintenance issues, just maintenance management. So just trying to get a center of where your mental health is, I think is just as important than actually dealing, or probably more so important than dealing with an immediate mental health crisis. So trying to get to the point of knowing where you are yourself and where, things can be improved upon, it can actually help to prevent you getting to a point of crisis. So I would actually think about, for everyone, advocate really just trying to go through those services. I mean, right now.
There's something in the chat too, I think, guys.
You're muted, Dr. Allen.
There's a Mrs. Tree who says, please stress the importance of having a safety plan in place in case you can't get through to the suicide prevention line. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So Dr. Fletcher, you want to take that one away? What's the backup plan if you cannot reach the suicide prevention?
So preparation is the, the key to everything. Is that if you have an opportunity, now is the time. If you have the clearness of mind to say, what if I can get through the suicide hotline? First of all, there's always 911, period, full stop. If you can't get through the suicide hotline, you call 911, period, full stop, nothing else. After that, if you're able to, or if you need to, make those connections now with the people that you believe care about your well-being the most, and reach out to them, whether it be a phone call, whether it be text message. Find that person that will show up the moment you say, I need you. And if you don't have that person, you can't get through the suicide hotline, you call 911, period.
And I would just see for that particular person, and someone mentioned in the chat, an accountability buddy, absolutely. Make sure that person you trust very dearly has, if you're living alone, has a key to your home, or has access to your home in case they cannot get in touch with you. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So thank you all so much. That's some all helpful advice about, a lot of things that go on mental health wise during the holidays, and just not even during the holidays, but just year round, especially in the pandemic. Next topic we're going to talk about is influenza, right? So, as we traditionally would talk about, is the flu in the fall and importance of vaccination of the flu in the fall. So with the caveat for this year, the CDC is showing that there's about a 0.3 clinical laboratory positivity rate for the influenza virus, which is actually, much lower than, traditionally pre-pandemic. However, the flu activity has been low, but the number of influenza detection reports have actually been increasing in recent weeks. So I think a common question that I get, I'm just going to pose this question in the clinic, is, the flu virus is not out there this year as much as it is now. So why should I get the vaccine then? Why should I get the flu vaccine? Is it still important? Is it still relevant?
Oh, absolutely. I'll top that off at least for, I know our pregnant patients, we definitely recommend it, annually. I mean, if you're pregnant, every time you get pregnant, because of the risk, being pregnant is what we describe as an immunocompromised state. What do I mean by that? You're at higher risk for things, whether you think about flu infections, urinary tract infections, anything, you're kind of at higher risk for those things. So for flu, we say go ahead and get, when it starts getting cold, as soon as you can get it, talk to your obstetrician about getting vaccinated for the flu, because we do know that these run a higher risk, in pregnancy. And along with that, I think we'll mention a little bit more later on, definitely getting your COVID vaccination as well.
Yeah, let's not wait for the car crash to occur. Let's get ahead of this. This is actually a really great thing that flu cases have gone down. When we were looking back at stats for 2019, there were 65,000 cases of flu. And then in 2020, we only had 1,000 reported cases to the CDC. So it went down drastically, less deaths. And that was really because, we were so busy trying to combat and lower cases of COVID, and you have flu that's not as contagious. So all those things, the measures to wear masks, socially distance, frequent hand washing, that really helped to combat those cases. But again, as we're mentioning, we're not paying as much heed to that anymore and not realizing that flu is still a threat, flu is still around, and we're getting cases as of October, the beginning of October, there have been 320 cases, and just this past week, of those 320, 101 cases were reported. So you can see that steady incline of the total cases are coming from just this past week and a half. So, it's definitely becoming a threat. And the majority of the cases were actually influenza A, H3N2, and that's a strain that the flu shot protects from. So if we had more people getting their annual flu shots, we could really keep those numbers down and not have it be a threat, because, you can get this shot as early as 6 months of age, or, protecting when you're pregnant, your fetus, that is important. There's actually even studies that show if you get the flu shot, there's some indirect protection against COVID. So you're really doing yourself an overall service, because, if we look back, history has been repeating itself. When COVID and everything first started happening, we saw so many similarities to the Spanish flu of 1918. And so we can see the potential havoc that flu has, and it still hasn't, been completely eradicated. It's still here. Very similar in presentation to COVID. I like to say that COVID is flu on steroids, because, the symptoms can be very, similar and hard to really tell which one is which. So if you're thinking about getting a COVID test, I would really consider getting that rapid flu as well. And to prevent all of those things, getting that COVID shot, getting that flu shot, it's very important.
I tell the parents right now that, because I do have parents asking, well, what's the point? I don't see it. Just like Dr. Yoda said, the flu is at home chilling. He's hanging out, waiting, ready, like, oh, y'all worry about COVID. All right, I'm ready. Everybody's coming home for Thanksgiving. I'm about to be inside, including some yams. So you about to have yams with a side of flu, right? So just know that flu is still out there. It's still around. And so when I ask parents, would they like to get, their child vaccinated for the flu? If they don't want it for their child, I say, okay, at least get it yourself to protect your child. I worry about, who do we worry about the most? Dr. Guinea mentioned this. So pregnant women, we worry about the small infants, children, or those who have, certain diseases. So like asthmatics, those who are obese, things like that. I worry about those patients. So if you don't want your child to get it, for there are various reasons why parents, are hesitant, please protect your children. Please protect your grandparents and those who you're around who are immunocompromised.
Right, and particularly even in this fall, because with mask mandates being decreased or reduced, one of the things is, I think Dr. Johnson and Dr. Uroda mentioned it, a lot more people are gathering inside. There's a higher chance, your little cousins touching that doorknob, they might get a little bit of the sniffles, and then, they grab the doorknob, somebody else grabs the handle, they're going to the bathroom. So, you want to kind of be aware of these things. And more than anything, like one of the things that Dr. Uroda mentioned was that sequence of washing your hands, kind of being aware when you're going in places. I even now, even though I'm vaccinated, I still wear my mask in high traffic areas. Not so much that I'm super concerned about myself, but I'm more worried about what I'm going to bring home or what I'm going to bring to around those people that aren't necessarily as healthy as I am.
Yeah, and just one thing that, we'd like to add, just to kind of, again, re-emphasize how serious the flu can be, again, although we're in COVID right now, but don't be fooled. is that in 2019 to 2020, that was, the year right before COVID hit, CDC reported that there were 35 million flu-related illnesses. There were 16 million flu-related medical visits. And then, translating to hospitalizations, that was 380,000. And then there were 20,000 flu-related deaths. So just keep in mind that if you're getting 20,000 flu-related deaths, that's almost on a yearly basis. That means that flu is still something serious to be, looked at. And so for that reason, again, we still encourage flu vaccinations, especially for those in higher risk populations, because it's still out there. It really is.
There's something in the chat too.
Okay, so we say, okay, yes. We got a question in the chat that says school closures were one of the main contributors to the low number of cases. I think they're saying last year, maybe. Schools are open. Most flu epidemics start in schools. School-age children get parents sick. So yep. I think that's a really important point there.
Yeah, I think that would piggyback on what Dr. Johnson was mentioning earlier as well.
That was also Dr. Johnson who said that comment. That was thank you, Dan, for the comments.
So I'm just making sure we're not having any more questions here, and then we're going to move on to our final topic of the night, and then we'll try to circle back around to some other questions that weren't answered yet. So our final topic of the night is COVID-19, of course. Again, last but not least. So with COVID-19, we know that there are now boosters. We know all three are offering the boosters. All three, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson are offering boosters now. And that there's been talk about different flu vaccines that might have synergistic effects with others, or questions about, can certain ones be taken together? There has now been introduction of the vaccines for children. And then, of course, the other hot topic is the vaccine mandate. There are a lot of thoughts about that too. And the last and final topic under COVID will be the new COVID treatments that have also been arising. So would anybody like to start on any of those topics? I guess we can start with this. Let's start with
just briefly, I would just say for those who know what exactly is a booster. A booster is just as simple as additional dose given to fully vaccinated people to offer some protection from slightly waning immunity. When they say a waning immunity, that's the neutralizing antibody. It's not your immune system in its entirety. So it's not that the vaccine doesn't work. It's still highly effective in preventing severe illness. But what research was showing is that for mild to moderate disease, it wasn't offered. It's after about 6 to 8 months, the protection is start to decline. So therefore, there's the introduction of a vaccine booster. And it's just to prolong protection. And if you just want to summarize, I don't know if Dr. Koye wants to elaborate even more on the criteria, who's eligible for a booster. And then Dr. Yeroda wants to also add in about boosters.
Yeah, sure. So just specifics for the Pfizer and Moderna, which are mRNA vaccines. The criteria for a booster. So I also want to take this time to separate a booster from a third dose. There have been people who've been getting third doses. Okay, that is, they're both extensions of the first two doses. Okay, but think of the third dose as an incompletion. So the first two are not necessarily complete until the third dose. Okay, this is specific for immunocompromised individuals. Okay, people with severe underlying conditions where the first two doses may not have been effective, and a third dose is considered essentially like a completion of their series. Okay, those individuals. One of the key takeaways to differentiate them. The third dose individuals, you take the this is for Pfizer and Moderna. Okay, The doses are going to be 21 days apart from each other for Pfizer, 28 days apart from each other for Moderna. And so that is for every for one dose, you wait 21 to 28 days, you get the second dose. After the second dose, you wait 21 to 28 days, then you get a third dose, okay? The booster has various criteria, okay? The booster, you wait, this is for Pfizer and Moderna, you wait after the first 2 doses, you have to wait 6 months, okay, from the second dose, apologies, to get that third booster shot, okay? So that is, you take the first dose, you wait 21 to 28 days, and then you get that second dose. After the second dose, you wait 6 months, okay, and then you get that booster. All right, and so who fits the criteria for a booster? All right, so essentially just based on age alone, not talking about any type of medical criteria, age alone is the 65 and over population. Okay, with the boosters, we're targeting people who are of high risk and high need. All right, now removing the age, okay, for the 18 and older, all right, the 18 and older population, if you have a underlying medical condition, this could be obesity, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune diseases, cancer, all right, those are immunocompromised diseases. I mentioned immunocompromised for the third dose. That also falls in line, okay? So if you're immunocompromised, you would go for the third dose, okay? But other type of medical conditions, okay, are what can get you qualified for that booster. Again, the obesity, the autoimmune, the heart disease, asthma, things like that, okay? Other than the medical conditions, if you're 18 and you are in a high-risk environment, if you work in healthcare, if you're a teacher, if you are in you work in a restaurant, you're servicing a high amount of people, though you are at high risk and you are eligible for a booster. And then also if you are 18 and above and in a long-term care facility, okay? So those are 4 criteria that I just named. One related to age 65 and older. The other 3 are 18 and older, where you need a medical condition, you are in a high-risk environment, or you live in a high-risk facility, okay? That's all Moderna and Pfizer. J&J is different. The J&J, you only need to be 18 and older. That's the only age requirement right now. And you do not wait the 6 months, okay, that you would wait for a Pfizer or Moderna booster. You wait 2 months after your first dose of the J&J, okay? So that's the criteria. If you have any questions specifically about that, please put it into the Q&A. I'll try to clarify. But where it becomes a little bit more, I wouldn't say confusing, but where it adds a little bit of extra complication. They have the mixing and matching going on. Okay, the mixing essentially what they've noticed, or when I say they, the bodies that basically review the public health information that's going on and kind of give us our guidelines regarding what we should be doing in this pandemic. They have been looking at different countries that have been implementing a mixed dosing approach. This has come about because of issues with availabilities of vaccines and people not being able to get it. So that is sort of how it started. But there are also studies going on in labs where they're looking at the effects of mixing. Okay, and so what we've seen is that there has been a robust response in antibody response to having a different mixture from what you started with. So if you started out with a Pfizer and you ended, you got a booster with the Moderna, you would see a significant increase in if you did Pfizer. Moderna, likewise, if you started out with a Moderna and you went to a Pfizer, you would see an increased antibody response. And if you did just Moderna. This is only for the antibody response. We're still looking at studies to see, whether this translates to, actual prevention of hospitalizations, death, if it can, impacts the death rate, transmission rate as well. So things of that nature. But we're kind of going off of the studies that we're seeing. The J&J is a different beast, where we're seeing a significant robust response when you finish the J&J, you take that first dose, and then you add on an mRNA booster. Rather than doing a J&J and then a J&J, doing a J&J for your first dose, and then a Pfizer or Moderna has shown a significant increase in the antibody response. I mean, I'm not going to get into technicalities and details. Moderna showed a little bit greater response than Pfizer, but I mean, generally, we still have to kind of suss out the details and see what actually what that means in real life. Okay, so this is why you hear about the mixing and matching, and this is why many people advocate for it. At the end of the day, it's your own personal decision, and you can choose to talk with your primary physician or talk with the individuals, the healthcare clinicians who are at the vaccine site to attend.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the booster concept, and that, we really anticipated this. As soon as we got the COVID vaccine, we knew that more than likely we were going to have to get an additional series at some point. And we see this across the board with, multiple vaccines. When you got hepatitis B as a newborn, you got, multiple doses until you built full immunity. We get our tetanus, or we're expected, recommended to get our tetanus boosters every 10 years after you've completed those series that build up your immunity. So this is just the same concept coming back with our COVID vaccine, that, we really want to eliminate this stigma that this vaccine isn't effective, or why do we got to get a booster? That means it must not have been that good or that working. We're covering for what we expected, because that's how our immune system works. That's all.
All right, so just one last topic here I just wanted to bring up in regards to the COVID vaccine, especially when it comes to pediatrics, is kind of the concern about myocarditis with the vaccine. So if anyone, I guess, pediatric here would want to make a quick comment on that.
I mean, I know I talked a lot already. I just wanted to kind of give the intro for the children, because I didn't mention that. But essentially, we know now that the pediatric individuals, this is from 5 to 11 and another set 12 to 17. From the ages 5 to 11, there is just a release of FDA authorization. This essentially allows emergency use authorization. This allows for the prescription or the allowance of the dosing of Pfizer for the peds group. All right, so it's only Pfizer that's available for ages 5 to 11, and it is not available for Moderna or J&J. With this particular dose, the difference between this one and the other pediatric dose, this is the 12 to 17. The 5 to 11 is 1/3 the dose of the 12 to 17. So they give 30 micrograms from the 12 to 17. They give 10 micrograms for the 5 to 11. It's following the same schedule, all right, meaning that you get your first dose, you wait 21 days, and then you get your second dose. All right, and you have to wait 2 weeks after the doses for the optimal protection to occur. Okay. One of the quick questions before we get into the side effects that tend to have come up. Well, if my child is like an 11 on the cusp of 12, should they get the dose while they're 11 and then get the second dose while they're 12? Because they will get different doses at that point. I would suggest just waiting out until they get to, if they're a healthy, normal child, no significant risk factors, and no one around as well with significant risk factors, they can wait until 12, get increase the higher dose, and then follow up with the second higher dose. If there are a child and they have underlying issues, medical issues, or they're around people with that, they can get the dose, and then they will get the adjusted dose when they turn 12.
All right, so we just have this, we'll answer a question or two.
Hey guys, we didn't answer the question about the myocarditis. Just very quickly, myocarditis is an inflammation of the heart muscle itself. There were concerns that parents were expressing, like, hey, I heard that there's heart issues when they get the vaccine. So first of all, in the trial, which was with a little bit more than like 3,000 children, they did not see an increased risk of myocarditis. Of course, when you release this in the general public, you're going to see adverse effects that don't come up when you do a clinical trial. So the children that did get it, this was seen in the older adolescents, actually usually male. So the 12 to 29-year-olds, and the myocarditis was temporary. They quickly recovered. And those who even needed a little bit more help, they followed them over the next couple of months, they improved as well. So that's overall to say that the benefits of the vaccine still outweigh the risk, okay? There was not an increased risk of getting myocarditis with the vaccine more than there is of having an acute infection. Just wanted to get that up.
Right. And I would just follow it up and say that, there's several of us are parents on here, and then I can say that I have one in the 14-year-old group, I have one in the 7, and I have one in the 4. And at the end of the day, I will encourage any parent to get their child vaccinated. But if you're someone who's trying to figure out if the vaccination is best for me or what's best for my family, those are decisions that you need to make for your family. But at the same time, I would encourage that if you have a child that has any pre-existing conditions, and we're talking things like asthma, if they have eczema, if they have hypersensitivities, if they have respiratory issues, if they have cardiovascular issues, if they have immune system issues such as lupus, or if they have sickle cell, these are the kids that are significantly more prone to severe COVID symptoms, like symptoms, because they're already immune compromised, which we've talked about earlier. So if you have a child that falls in any of those categories where they have any type of pre-existing conditions, or they're taking medications for things on a regular basis, there's a good chance, a good possibility that they fall into that higher risk of severe COVID symptoms should they contract the virus. And which is why, I can speak for myself. I think I can speak for everybody else that if you have a child in that group, they should be the ones at the front of the line to get vaccinated.
The first question is the immune system response to the booster expected to be about the same as the prior doses?
I can say from my experience, actually it was a little milder, but I did experience some like muscle ache, a little headache, very mild, but I went to work the next day. I got mine like on a Wednesday, went to work Thursday, didn't slow me down at work. I didn't have to take a day off, but once again, everybody immune response is a little different. So for me, it was a little milder than my second dose. I got Pfizer. But yes, I would overall, just to generalize it, I would say to expect some type of immunogenic response, but whether it's equal to your second dose, whether it's milder, or I've had people who said they didn't feel anything on their third dose. So it's just gonna kind of vary.
Yep. And second question is it safe to say these vaccines will be needed yearly like the flu shot?
So I'll take a swing at this and say it's a little early to say that, simply because globally there is a global effort internationally to track COVID, to track the different variations of COVID, to track the different strains of COVID. And what we don't know is how contagious those strains are going to be. But what we do know is that there is an international effort to keep an eye on it the same way we do with the flu. And right now, there are entities already gearing up to say, hey, if this is going to be a yearly thing, how are we going to best handle it? But unfortunately, at this point, I don't think anybody's able to tell you that this is going to need to be a yearly thing like the flu. But I think most people will tell you that COVID is not going anywhere anytime soon.
It's a possibility.
And to piggyback on what Dr. Fletcher is saying is that the goal at this point now, most of the top infectious disease experts are saying that they don't think COVID is going anywhere. But the goal is for it to turn from a pandemic to an endemic. An endemic virus meaning that Yes, it could be something we see every year, but it'll be seasonal like the flu, and it will cause mild symptoms, or it would just be like the flu, a bad cold or a flu, that it was the hospitalization rates and the death will significantly decrease. But one of the main ways that can happen is increase in vaccination rates.
Right.
Or whether it's the kids, whether it's adults, but the goal is for this to turn into an endemic virus. And once again, endemic meaning that we will see it every year, but it won't cause severe disease. It would cause just like a really bad cold, just like influenza. Even though we know the statistics that flu can put you in the hospital and cause severeness, but most likely you can fight it. Most healthy, adults can fight flu at home, and that's the goal that we want to do with COVID-19.
But all right, everybody, thank you all again for attending tonight's session.
Yes, thank you.
Again, you can find us on social media at Young Black Physicians, all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as the email address at gmail.com. If you have further questions or like to request for us to speak for any of your organizations for any health-related topic, we're more than willing to. All right, everybody, you all have a good night and have a happy holiday. All right, we'll see you.